If you want to live in a beautiful tropical paradise and enjoy what I believe is the best cuisine in the world, a country with a low cost of living and high English fluency, then check out the rich and diverse land of my ancestors. Malaysia, truly Asia. There are coastal cities, urban villages, American-style suburbs, beach resorts, jungles, mountains, all kinds of environments to fit your preferences, except that it's hot everywhere. And there's also an attractive visa option that just might be suitable for you. I'll give you the details coming right up. What's up, Firewalking fam? In the previous video, I briefly mentioned for a second a very popular visa program out of Malaysia called the Malaysia My Second Home, or MM2H visa. The MM2H program has been around for almost 2 decades, has been extremely popular with over 42,000 approvals, plus many more participants coming as dependents, and by and large has been seen as a massive success. But in today's video, I'm not actually here to talk about the Malaysia My Second Home visa program. Not exactly. Now, I will share some background on it so that if you're not familiar, you'll have some context to understand. But my goal with these videos about immigration options isn't to offer some comprehensive guide on the subject for every country around the world. Rather, when I create these types of videos, my intention is to highlight lesser known options that I feel would be beneficial to people if they just knew about them. So today's topic is actually not about the federal MM2H program, which, like I said, is hugely popular already, but instead this is specifically going to be about a variation in Malaysia called the Sarawak My Second Home visa program. Now, Sarawak is a state in East Malaysia that has its own set of immigration rules. There's also another state to its north, Sabah, which is also in East Malaysia and handles its own immigration, and they too have their own My Second Home program, but theirs isn't really special in the way the Sarawak program is. So in this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about Malaysia and why it's an attractive place to live, a little bit about the MM2H program, and then specifically why the Sarawak MM2H might be a better alternative for some of you out there considering a move to Malaysia. Alright, so why Malaysia? Well, I touched on it in the intro, but it deserves emphasis. The food, the diverse culture, the affordability, wide variety of environments and options, very good and cheap private healthcare facilities, and the prevalence of English. If you're watching this, then you're probably an English speaker. Plus, there's also a significant Chinese population, so many different Chinese dialects are also widely spoken in Malaysia. For the Chinese diaspora, there's a lot of opportunity for familiarity and comfort and shared spoken language as well. Ditto India to a slightly lesser degree. Again, you'll find a lot of ethnic Indians speaking various dialects. All of the above are reasons why Malaysia is frequently listed at the top of expat and retiree destinations. International Living, Expatica, Internations, and many other publications all rave about retiring in Malaysia. My family is from Penang, which is an island state, sort of, in the northwest region of Malaysia. It has a majority Chinese population, huge expat presence, retirees as well as workers in the large manufacturing sector. It has nice beaches, great food, etc. You may have heard of Georgetown, which is the capital city of Penang and an UNESCO World Heritage Site. But the entire state of Penang is relatively small. It's like one large urban agglomeration. Then there's Kuala Lumpur, which is the capital of Malaysia. Much more of a typical Asian metropolis. 8 million people, a diverse economy, excellent international airport with tons of routes throughout Asia and beyond. Transit infrastructure and walkability is not really as great as you'd expect from a major Asian metro, but it's decent and it's improving. Certainly compared to American cities, it is not bad at all. There are a lot of pockets where you can live comfortably without a car. I'm just going to briefly touch on a few other notable cities, obviously leaving some others out. There is Malacca, which is another well-known UNESCO World Heritage Site. You have Langkawi, which is one of the world's highly rated beaches and kind of is Malaysia's version of Bali. You have Johor Bahru, which is not a bad city in its own right, but it is most notable as the border city to Singapore. So there are a lot of daily commuters into Singapore, and if access to Singapore is important to you, then JB could be a much more affordable alternative. And lastly, this video is about Sarawak's second home program, so I'll mention the capital and largest city, Kuching, which has about 700,000 population. I've never been there, but it's often described as a very nice, laid-back city with plenty of amenities and the same rich diversity that you find throughout Malaysia. It's definitely a place I look forward to visiting. The MM2H is a 10-year social visit pass, so technically a tourist visa that confers additional benefits as if the visa holder is a long-term resident. But that status of tourist really is important and came into focus during the pandemic when the Malaysian borders closed down to foreigners with almost no warning, and left a lot of folks who live in Malaysia full-time on the MM2H visa but happen to be traveling outside the country. It left them stranded and unable to access their homes. We'll circle back to this later, but as I said, the program itself was a roaring success for many years. Basically, if you could show a monthly offshore income of 10,000 Malaysian ringgit, which is approximately $2,500 and you made a fixed deposit into a Malaysian bank account, depending on your age, it would be up to $73,000. Then you and your dependents would receive a 10-year visa to enter Malaysia anytime you want. And you'd get a handful of other small benefits that make it easier to make Malaysia your full-time home. There's an entire ecosystem that has been built around this program. Visa agents, real estate agents, tens of thousands of expats, and the businesses that have sprung up to cater to them. I won't get into the pros and cons of this industry for locals. Needless to say, it's not black and white, and there are pros and cons. But overall, the program has brought a lot of money into the Malaysian economy. That said, in recent years, like since 2019 or so, the MM2H program has been running into a lot of issues and began to lose a lot of the goodwill and positive reputation that it had built over the previous decade. The government began to restructure the departments that oversaw this visa. They created confusion and obstacles in the application process. And then we began seeing a massive backlog of applications. Oftentimes it was taking over a year to get approval with little communication or updates. So just a lot of frustration all around. And then came the pandemic. As I said, the government wouldn't allow MM2H holders to return home to Malaysia, which was a big PR mess and just not very fair if you can imagine mostly elderly folks who've been living full-time in Malaysia for the better part of a decade, suddenly not allowed to access their homes during a global pandemic. So that was bad, but then in the midst of the pandemic and all the chaos and hundreds of applicants wondering what's going on with their applications, the program was officially shut down indefinitely, and all the applicants in the queue were told to withdraw their applications. Now the program supposedly is being reworked and revamped. I think it is certainly going to return in the near future, but the terms will likely be very different and probably harder to qualify. And as I said, the damage to the reputation has been done. There are so many understandably angry applicants and participants who are taking their time and their money elsewhere. We will see how things shake out, but that's the situation today. Enter the Sarawak My Second Home program. The SM2H or S-MM2H is a 5-year social visit pass with the option to extend for another 5 years. And of course, like MM2H, can be renewed at the end of the 10 years. But there are 2 primary reasons why the Sarawak option could be better for you. Number 1, it is actually working and they are receiving applicants right now, while the MM2H is indefinitely suspended. Also, the process prior to the pandemic was far more efficient with the SM2H, so while some MM2H applicants were waiting in limbo for over a year, SM2H generally approved applicants within a few months. Now, even though they are processing applications at the moment, they are not allowing foreigners into Malaysia, so you can't yet go do your passport endorsement and complete the process, nor can you live there, obviously. I know people who have already applied and been approved and now are just waiting for border restrictions to loosen. But you can apply, which is already better than the federal program. And if you happen to be in Malaysia already, then under certain conditions, you can enter Sarawak at this time. So the second reason is that the SM2H requires either a fixed deposit or offshore income, but not both. This used to be true of the federal program, but they made changes years ago to require both the income and a deposit. So with the Sarawak program, if you have the income, then you don't need to make a deposit. Or if you don't have the income, you can just do the fixed deposit amount, which will probably be less than whatever deposit the federal program requires when it returns. Now, the SM2H went through its own redesign recently, and actually its terms are less attractive now than it used to be. Man, it was such a sweet deal before. Still, as it is today, it is worth exploring. So let's go over the new details of the program, effective as of September 1st, 2020. You can find a link to the official program guide in the description down below. Now, the first thing you'll notice is that, unlike the MM2H program, the Sarawak program has an age limit. To qualify for any pathway, you must be at least 30 years old, and that's the strictest category to apply for. So instead, let's start with the easiest pathway. If you are over 50 years old, you can qualify using either one of two options: a pension or offshore income, and if you're a single person, the requirement is 7,000 Malaysian ringgit per month, which is about $1,700 US. Or for a couple or a family, it is 10,000 Malaysian ringgit, or about $2,500 US per month. And the second method, like I mentioned earlier, is with a fixed deposit. So if you're a single person, the requirement is 150,000 Malaysian ringgit, approximately $37,000 US. And for a couple or family, it's 300,000 Malaysian ringgit, or about $73,000 US. Let's talk about this real quick in case you're unfamiliar with a fixed deposit visa requirement. I've mentioned it a few times already for the federal program, and basically what it means is you need to open a local bank account in whatever country, because many other countries require this as well. And sometimes it's at a designated bank in that country, and then you need to deposit those funds to be held in that account for the duration of your visa. Normally it will accrue interest, and usually those interest rates are better than they are in the US, although you have to beware of currency devaluation. But my point is that, generally speaking, a fixed deposit is very secure and it's not an expense. So in the case of Malaysia, you absolutely will get those funds back with interest when you end the visa program. Also, you are allowed to access a portion of those funds. Under the Sarawak program, it's 40% for approved expenses, which are purchasing a home, purchasing a vehicle, medical expenses, and children's education expenses. Moving on, if you are not yet 50 years old, but you are at least 40, then you can qualify based on those same terms, monthly income or fixed deposit, but you must also purchase a home in Sarawak to live in. Buying a property will allow you to participate in the Sarawak My Second Home program if you're between the ages of 40 and 50. If you purchase in Kuching, then you must buy a minimum 600,000 Malaysian ringgit property. Anywhere else in Sarawak, and your minimum purchase is 500,000 Malaysian ringgit. Finally, if you're between the ages of 30 and 50 years old, there are two other possible pathways to the Sarawak My Second Home visa. One, if your child is a minor pursuing education in Sarawak, then you are eligible. Or two, if you are undergoing long-term medical care in Sarawak, then you are eligible. And yes, Sarawak is a medical tourism destination, so it makes sense to some degree. But no, you cannot really cheat on this requirement with some quasi-elective medical treatment. It has to be a legitimate medical condition approved by the Malaysian Medical Council and requiring long-term care. So if you want to live in Sarawak and you fit into these profiles and conditions, then perfect. The application process, which I'm not really getting into in this video, is fairly involved but straightforward. However, what I think is most compelling about the Sarawak program is if you want to live in Peninsula Malaysia or West Malaysia, where Kuala Lumpur, Penang, Johor Bahru, Langkawi, and so forth, where those places are located and where the majority of Malaysian residents live. If you want to be there, the Sarawak My Second Home program allows you to do that. So if you are over 50 and you either cannot make the required fixed deposit or the required pension amount for the federal program, then this is your back door. I mean, with the federal program suspended at the moment, this is the only door. Now, if you're 40 years old, the real estate requirement makes it a little tricky because you'd have an empty home in Sarawak that you're not supposed to rent out. Maybe there's a way to figure that out, or maybe you can afford to have a condo sit empty for most of the year. I don't know, but that does make things trickier. Same with the education and medical requirements for somebody who's 30 years old. Really, those who would benefit most, I believe, are applicants who are 50 years old and, as I said, will not qualify for the federal MM2H program for one of those reasons. So the only catch is that you need to spend at least 15 days in Sarawak every year for the first 5 years for you to be granted another 5-year extension. So if you're living in West Malaysia on this program, you just have to go over to vacation in Sarawak for 2 weeks every year, which isn't a bad thing at all. And that's only if you're planning to extend or renew. Otherwise, you don't even have to worry about it. And there you have it. If you want to know more about Sarawak and their My Second Home program, check out the link to the program guide that I'll put in the description down below. If you want to know more about Malaysia, Google it. There's a lot of videos on YouTube as well. Or let me know. I love Malaysia and I'm always open to making more videos about it. As always, smash the like button, subscribe, and let me know in the comments if you have any questions or corrections or you want to say hi. And I'll see you next time. As I said, the government... And there you have it. If you want to know more, Malaysia. Smash the like button and subscribe. There's a fly.